Okay. Katrina, let's just get started, and I think we might be
Okay.
joined by somebody, but um, that's fine. So, can you see my screen?
Yes.
So, what I have here is I have basically a list of all of the different theories that we covered in the first part of the course, and then I have two columns. One column is a yes or no column, which is like, would this theory support the death penalty or would it not? Or if we're uncertain about that, that's an answer too. We might not be certain which way it would go. Um, and then we have another column that's like an account of why we chose that yes or no answer. So I was just gonna. The first thing I wanted to do was we were gonna try to go through this list and try to give answers for as many as we can. Um, and after that, I'm going to ask you what are some of your favorite arguments from what we read this week? What arguments do you think are maybe the best and the worst, or the most interesting arguments that you read? And we'll talk about those. So uh, let's get started with divine command theory at the top, and we'll just go through the list. What do you think the answer would be for the death penalty?
I don't. My. I don't think it would. I don't think it aligns with the death penalty because I don't think. I mean, there's the whole rule: "Thou shalt not kill." So I don't think it aligns with you know God commands it. God. I don't see God commanding the death penalty.
Okay, relativism. What do you think?
I think it does because it's all relative. I think the death penalty is all relative on what you believe and how you were brought up. Some
Okay.
people feel that if you kill someone, you should also, if you take a life, then who's to say your life can't be taken? Because some people feel that way.
Okay. What about a culture? What about a culture of people who don't feel that way? Like they think the death penalty is bad. Uh, would that be a no in that culture?
No, because it's all relative. I don't know how. I guess I don't understand.
Well, could it be like yes for certain cultures and no for other cultures because it's relative to the different cultures?
Okay, you could argue it that way too.
Okay. Is that is that convincing to
Like, I
you?
mean, that makes sense, and if you want to say it like that, it makes sense. But I mean,
Well, does it
I feel
convince
like in
you?
relativism, it allows it in a sense, right? Because there are some people that are for it. Like, it's not a total yes and it's not a total no because
Oh,
there could
okay.
be multiple different views.
Okay, so it allows it in a sense because it's not a total no.
Right? Does that?
I see what you mean.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, it's not a total no. It's not a total yes either, but I see
All
why
right.
you might think that it permits it in certain cultures, so we're going to say yes. Um okay, let's
Yeah.
move to egoism, and then we have hedonism and desire satisfaction too.
I feel like egoism it does because I feel like one's ego is why the death penalty was brought about. That like somebody thought they were all power, almighty, and they felt that they could make the decision on whether or not somebody should die and they had the control. So I feel like egoism, I feel
Okay.
like it does incorporate, it could.
So somebody thought to themselves, I'm going to kill this other person for my own ego, and so my ego allows the death penalty.
Yeah,
Okay. What about hedonism?
I don't know.
Okay. That's fine. We can mark it as a question mark. Desire satisfaction?
Eh, I mean, could somebody desire someone to have the death penalty? Like, could somebody, like, say, for instance, the family members of the person that got killed,
Okay.
would you think that their desires are being satisfied when the person that killed their family member was taken away?
Possibly. I mean, yeah, they could desire revenge. Um, though we could also say, could we also say that the family members of the person who's on death row, they desire for them not to be killed as well?
Right. Okay.
Okay. So does it go both ways, maybe?
Maybe.
Okay.
You could argue it both ways.
Okay. What about the rest of these? Let's try to go through them.
Sure. I would think so, because it's a consequence of something, right? It's a consequence of your actions. So, you chose to do something, and this is the result that it's a. So, I would think so.
Um, so do you think that the death penalty causes more good outcomes than bad outcomes? Is that what you're saying?
Are we going off of my opinion or what it really does?
Well, no, we're trying to
So I
go
don't
off
want to put
of
my opinion in this.
we're trying to go off of uh, consequentialism. So according to consequentialism, the theory, um, what is the right answer? And so I'm asking, does the death penalty cause good outcomes? Is that why the consequentialist would say yes?
It doesn't. Well, I guess no, because it doesn't cause a good outcome for the person that the death penalty is for. So I would say then no.
So it's not good. So the person who dies, that's a bad outcome. What about for
Correct.
society? Is death penalty good for society?
It all depends on who. I don't. I don't know. I don't want to. I
Okay.
mean, if you're taking the life of someone who's a serial killer who's killed 50 or 60 people, isn't it a benefit to the society that that person has now been removed? But
Okay.
if it's
So
someone who got falsely accused,
sure. So it could be bad or could be good. It depends.
yeah.
Okay. So we'll put a maybe. Uh, any thoughts on the next ones?
Oops, sorry. I can't. I'd say natural law, no. Virtue ethics, no.
Okay.
Feminist ethics, no. Um, so like care. I don't know about care ethics. Prima facie. So that's the one that is prima facie. What is the one where it's like it's the will of. Uh, I don't know all these answers. The will of you, the will to do it, the will, something like that.
Well, it's okay not to know. So are the rest of these, you think, question marks?
Yeah, because I don't know.
Okay. Well, so we can try to work through them. So like Kantianism, we could ask a question like, are we treating the person that we're killing, are we treating them like a human being according to the principle of humanity? Um, that could be, we could ask that question, yes or no. Any initial thoughts on that?
Um, then I would say no, right?
Okay.
Because I mean, you're making this a decision to take someone's life. You're not. I mean, in some cases, I don't know. I don't feel like maybe you're not treating them as a. Mm, maybe you're not treating them as a human, but more of a statistic or more of a liability.
Okay.
You know, if it's the case of like them harming people. Contractarianism is the social made up rules that we wouldn't accept if we were free, equal, and rational.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, maybe
Okay.
because it's you're going to court, you're being judged by your peers, so it is a social matter.
Okay.
And
Why
prima.
why did you answer no for these three? The natural law, virtue ethics, and feminist ethics.
So I don't think it's the natural way of life, right? Like if someone's life was to be taken, then nature would end up taking it, not us doing the task for it,
Okay.
right? Like the person would naturally die. The person would, nature would take its course. So say, they're driving down the road and they get in a car accident or, like something would happen naturally to that person. So the death penalty, I don't find it as a natural thing because we are inducing it.
Okay.
Either medicine or electricity or virtue ethics, it's a so it's not a virtuous um, situation, right? It's the opposite. We're taking someone's life because they. But say the person killed the people on virtue, right? Then what? Whether they said they were killing the people because God told them to, or they are doing it because they were trying to make a point.
Okay.
I don't know.
So we could put a question mark there.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't
Any
find
thought?
it. I don't.
Yeah. You don't find what?
I don't find it in the feminist ethics. Like I don't find it as relatable. I guess maybe in the
Oh,
feminist
okay.
ethics,
So not relevant maybe to feminist ethics.
maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Any thoughts on these last three? We haven't filled anything in, but maybe we haven't thought of any. Maybe we don't know.
I don't know. I was still trying to find the exact definition of that prim.
Yeah. So the prima
I
facie
can't.
duties is where you have a bunch of duties, and sometimes certain duties win out over others. Uh, so you might have a duty to help people, and that duty may win sometimes, but you also may have a duty to, um, for instance, keep your promises, and sometimes the duty to keep your promises wins, and you might have a bunch of those duties.
So I don't think this is relevant to that
Okay.
because hold on. if you are the person, so say you're the person that has to inject the medicine, or if you're the person that has to push the button, or you're the person, that has to strap the person in, you have a duty to do that because that's your job, but who's to say you believe in it? Who's to say that, you know,
Okay.
I mean, you would have to because you would think you'd have to because it's your job, but say you don't. Say you're not 100% okay with it, but
Sure.
it's your duty.
Okay. So
Does
you
that make sense?
a duty to job. Um, so one duty, you might have a duty to your job, but then you also have a duty not to hurt people, perhaps.
Right. Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Like, you don't want to harm anyone. You don't want to kill anyone. Like, that's not you
Yeah.
outside of your job, but your job requires you to do it.
Sure. You might also have a duty to, let's say you have a duty to protect society, something like that.
Okay.
Um, so maybe you're trying to protect society by having a justice system that has the death penalty, but you also feel a duty not to hurt people, and the death penalty does hurt people. So you have this conflict of duties.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense to me.
Okay. We're almost done. Do you think care ethics is relevant? So like,
I feel like people,
you feel like no?
no.
Do you think you have a duty to care about the death row inmate, or a duty to care about the victim of the death row inmate? Or do you think that people
I
do?
think your duty is stripped because you're not allowed to have an opinion if it's your job.
Okay. Well,
Like, if
so
you're the,
what about for people, let's say you're the brother of the victim, or maybe you're the brother of the murderer, let's say, the death row inmate. Do those people, the family members of the death row inmates, they care presumably about the outcomes that are going to happen?
I mean, yes, okay. They can care that way. So there is
Okay.
caring.
So there's caring is involved, perhaps.
Yeah, caring is involved, but at the same time, say you're on the opposite end where you don't know either party, and like I was saying about it's your job. So if you're the guard or the person behind I don't know all the controls of the death penalty, or you can't care about that person now because you're it's your job to take their life.
Right.
So I
Right.
mean,
They have a different set of considerations.
yeah.
Okay. The only one we left blank was hedonism, but it didn't seem like you thought that one was related. So we could we could just say not relevant, perhaps, if you think so.
Let's say no. Let's
Okay.
just say no. Just for
Okay. Awesome. We made it through them all. Good job. Good job on having
So,
at
I mean,
least something for
is
each.
it right or wrong?
Well, um, so I guess one thing we've noticed is that the different theories could give different answers about whether it's right or wrong, right?
Yeah.
Well, so uh, to that question though, let's talk a little bit about the arguments that we read about in the chapter. Were there any arguments that you thought were uh, good ones, bad ones, interesting ones? What do you think?
I'm going to lie to you and tell you that I read it. Um, But the punishment is applied in the system. So the different arguments, right? So we've got the incoherent. Murder is immoral. Capital punishment is murder. Therefore, capital punishment is immoral. See.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let's start with that one. So, do you think
okay.
that this is a good argument or a bad argument, the incoherence argument?
So, I believe murder is immoral. I do believe that.
Okay.
And capital punishment is, but is it? Okay, it is murder, but I don't know. I don't agree with capital being immoral. But then that takes away. Never mind.
So
I say I don't like my opinion in any of this. So
okay. So let's start with you agree murder's immoral. So let's say we agree with premise 1.
right.
Now with premise 2, capital punishment is murder. You were about to agree to that one too, but can't we make a counter to that one? Can't we make a
Yes,
counter?
because it's is it a legal form of murder? That sounds horrible, but is it a legal form of murder? In other words, you were judged by your peers and you were decided upon by a group of people that you were guilty.
Sure.
Is it still considered murder at that point, or is it just yeah?
Yeah. Well, so do you think that's the right kind of question. So, do you think that all killing is murder? That's
No,
the that's the so you can kill without it being murder. So, what's a good example of this? We might think of
in the
some
hospital.
in a hospital.
So today, so say for instance today,
Okay.
I had to do CPR on a patient. They went completely blue, no pulse, no nothing. They weren't pronounced dead at that point because we had to start CPR. Say we did CPR. We're sitting there doing CPR. I'm doing everything right. I'm doing everything per my job, doing everything. But say somewhere along the lines, that person dies because of us after we've been giving him CPR, say his ribs break and it punctures his lungs and that kills him, or say they try to intubate him and in the process of intubating him, they do something that ends up killing him, or
Okay.
I don't
So
know, you know,
accidentally killing someone. That's not the same as murder.
right? But it's still
Okay.
killing somebody.
Yeah. So we can say for number 2 then, we can say capital punishment is killing someone. Uh, but it's not necessarily murder. It's a different
Right,
thing. Okay.
right,
Are you convinced by that?
yes.
Okay. So it sounds like this argument is probably one that we think is a weak argument because we think there's a flaw in it.
I think there's a flaw. I think that
Okay.
using murder after capital punishment is not correct.
Okay.
Like I said, is killing is taking a person's life, but I don't think it's murder.
Yeah. So you
But
would
it's a
agree with this critique right here that capital punishment's not murder.
yes,
Okay. Let's try out a different argument then. Do you want to just
the
move to the
absolute
next one?
argument. Yeah, killing people is absolutely wrong. That is wrong always and everywhere. That's not true.
Yeah. So it sounds like you
Killing
already
people
disagree
is
with this
absolutely wrong.
argument.
Yeah, like I don't feel like, I mean, like I said, in the hospital, you don't intentionally want to take anyone's life, but if you're working to try to bring them back and something goes wrong in the process of bringing them back to life, you may have taken their life, which is the same thing as killing them, but not intentionally.
Yeah.
So that's not, in no way, shape, or form was that wrong, you know?
Okay. So you disagree with premise one. So
Yes.
this argument, you don't like this one. Okay.
Nope.
What about this
I
next
am
one?
not in agreement to it.
um, from
Uh,
discrimination.
if it is applied in a system, then it is morally unjustified. I mean, okay. If it's based on discrimination, then I believe that it's unjustified.
Okay.
But I don't think the death penalty is always applied in a systemically discriminatory way.
Okay.
I mean, you don't always see like one race given a death penalty. You don't always see one gender always getting the death penalty. I feel like it's not, unless you're saying it's discriminatory towards murderers, but
Yeah.
but, but like
Yeah.
it's not racially or gender discriminatory.
Yeah. So,
So
well,
the
so
second part,
that would go on. Sorry.
I would say the second premise, then, to me, I don't agree with.
Okay. So you disagree with premise two. Do you agree with premise one?
If it is applied in a discriminatory way, then it's morally unjustified. I mean, yeah, because that's what we try to not do, right? That's why we do a trial with a jury of the peers and everything, because we don't want it to be discriminatory. You don't want one person making the decision because they might be biased.
Okay. So in this case, we are going to say we're okay with premise one, but you think that premise two, um, it just doesn't hold up. Do you
Yeah.
think that do you think like if we looked at some statistics and the statistics told us that whoa, it really is quite discriminatory, then would we want to change our minds here about premise two?
If there were numbers, but there's no numbers in this book.
Yeah. Um, and that's yeah. We're this the statistics are for essentially the statistics are for statisticians. Right now, we're just trying to figure out whether the argument would hold. So you're saying basically, if you looked at a graph and or a table and the numbers showed you that it was discriminatory, that you would probably change your mind about this one.
Correct.
Cool. Okay. All right. Um, so it
Because
sounds
I
like
like numbers.
yeah, numbers can be can entirely change your perspective on it too, potentially. Um, so here we have the killing innocence argument. So with this one, if we know that a social practice will result in killing innocents, then it is immoral and ought to be abolished. We know that the death penalty will result in killing innocents. What do you think about this one?
Ugh. So how many times? I mean, how many times have we heard that people are innocent on death row and then they get found to be innocent long after they've been killed? It's
Yeah,
very sad.
yeah,
Very sad. Uh, but for it to say then the death penalty is immoral and ought to be abolished, like, I feel like that's a very broad statement based off of, you know. I mean, if we're not, it would. I think that premise three would make more sense if it was found that everyone receiving the death penalty was found to be innocent afterwards, but it's not. So for it to make an absolute answer, that the death penalty is immoral and ought to be abolished based off of the that
Okay.
it will result in killing innocents, not that it always kills innocents.
Okay. So you think that the conclusion would only follow if it killed innocents all the time?
Right. If number two said the death penalty results in killing innocents, like only results in killing
Only
innocents.
results. Okay. So essentially, you agree with premise two that um, it does kill innocents um, sometimes, but
Right.
it sounds like you don't agree with premise one because you think that you think that the fact that it kills innocents sometimes is not enough to abolish it, basically.
Correct.
Okay. So you think basically can we relate this to back to your nursing? So like in the hospital, sometimes innocents do die in the hospital.
Yeah,
Um,
very sad. Very
yeah,
sad.
it's sad, but it doesn't mean that we should abolish hospitals, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
testing, or like that's. I guess that's a fight that's going on. I'm sorry. A fight that's going on is, if a nurse makes a med error and switches up medications, and that medication results in the patient dying, that nurse now gets stripped of her license, and now she's no longer to be a nurse because she made an error, an accident, switched up some medicine, and it ended up taking an innocent person's life because the medicine was either too strong, wrong med altogether that ended up killing that person. And is that morally right? Right? Because to be human is to err is to human, is to be human. So, we make mistakes, and as long as we learn from them, but some of these nurses are not even getting a chance to learn from their mistakes because, anyways,
Yeah.
on next one.
Well, so we've been through four, and I think that so far you haven't liked any of them, are which is
I
fine.
don't, I mean, it's very hard for me to like any of them because they don't ever, oh, if murderers deserve to die, then the state should execute them. Murderers deserve to die. Therefore, the state. Now, maybe I do like this one.
Okay, the just desserts.
Yes,
Okay,
I
so
like this
if
one
murderers
because
deserve to
I'm
die.
not. Yes,
Okay,
if you're
so
out there having fun killing people, and you've gone and you've taken multiple people's lives, why can't we execute you and get you out of here so you can stop killing innocent people?
okay,
That's my
so
two cents.
do you so if this is you think a stronger argument, and this is an argument basically in favor of the death penalty. Um,
Correct.
what do you think about the possible counters to this argument? So we can look at the page of counters. So the first counter, someone might
Nobody
say,
deserves to die.
yeah, somebody might say that, right? Murderers don't deserve to die. Uh, the other thing they
Right.
might say, murderers deserve to die, but the state doesn't have the right to execute them. Do you think either of those are good counters?
Yeah,
Which one do you like of those counters?
that nobody deserves to die.
Okay. So, do you would you prefer like what would be the alternative there? So we don't kill the murderer. What do we do with them to protect innocent people?
Stick them in jail forever.
Okay, so life in prison?
Life in prison.
Okay.
Which I don't understand. So in both U.S. government and Texas government, they're sitting there telling me that the death penalty costs more than a person in jail. And you're telling me someone who went to jail when they were 21 years old for murdering people, them being in jail for life. So say they live until they're 80, so they're in jail for 60 years. You're telling me it's cheaper overall for them to live in jail for 60 years than it is to put somebody on death row and kill them within 5 or 10 years? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, so we would have to, this is another case, like you mentioned before, where we would probably have to actually look at the numbers. Because the, I don't know how I don't know how the math plays out in both of those cases. I share your suspicion. It's a good question, right? Like, why does it cost more money why does it cost more money to kill somebody than it does to keep them alive for that long? That's definitely it's an interesting, it's confusing why that would be true. It might have
Well,
something to do with
from
like
what
the legal fees or
right.
something.
That's what their argument was. Is in capital punishment, it now goes in front of Supreme Court, and now
Yeah.
it's, federal and all that. So now it becomes super expensive for the state to put this person. Whereas if they pled guilty and now they get life in prison, or if they got charged with just life in prison, the the court system that they go through is not like, say, the Supreme Court. Now it's just, you know, I don't know, not as, you don't have as many legal fees. So they're telling me that it only costs $26,000 for an inmate to live in prison for a year. You're telling me it's only $26,000 for an inmate to live? That's paying for all of the guards. That's paying for, like, we have prisoners come to the hospital all the time.
Yeah.
So who's paying their hospital fees, right?
We'd have to, those are
Tax.
questions, but we'd have to look into
Yeah,
those.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
that's my argument with, them, with all of this capital punishment part is like, okay, all and well, if it's cheaper, then it's cheaper, but there's no, I just don't see, I just cannot fathom it being cheaper.
yeah.
But
Well, you know, we can say something because this in this class we're not really trying to crunch those numbers and figure that out.
right, right,
But what we can say is something like, well, we should design the justice system in such a way that it's that the expenses are reasonable. And it sounds like those judicial expenses are extremely high, right? Is what you're pointing out.
yeah,
Um, so maybe you're making an argument that we should reduce the expenses that are incurred by the judicial system. We should try to reduce those expenses, or something like that. Um, yeah, and you may be totally right. Like maybe there's a lot of expenses that could be cut. Um, maybe so.
right.
But that's a different argument though. It's a whole different set of considerations we could start making. Um,
And put us on a whole nother rant.
yeah, yeah, and I think that pretty much we're pretty much done unless you have any closing thoughts that you wanted to get off your chest. I'll let you go for the night.
Yeah, no, that was all. Like, I feel very strongly about the death penalty, so the the arguments of it being morally right and everything like that, like it's it's very strong, right? Like, yes, killing people, taking people's lives, it's not right, right? But if you have somebody who's a menace to society, who just constantly takes people's lives, like what are we going to do to stop this so then innocent people are not being taken advantage of? Like,
Yeah.
what are we going to put in place then? If you don't want this, what are we going to do then to stop this? You know? So,
Yeah. So you have intuitions in favor of the death penalty. Sounds like.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for all for bearing with me through all that, and let me know if you have any extra questions. I'll. I know that I think you emailed me, right? So
Yes.
um, make sure that I just want to make sure everything's settled on that front. As long as
Yes.
that's settled, I can let you go to sleep. It sounds like you're tired.
Eh, I got to work on what what the email was about. I got to work on, so.
Okay. Well, hope everything goes well. Talk to you
Thank
later.
you.
Bye.
All right.